Good evening and welcome. Tonight, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 extends gradual easing of lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, Kano and Abuja by 2 weeks, orders security agencies to begin enforcement of guidelines. President Muhammadu Buhari holds virtual meeting with state governors, asks them to work closely with Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to win fight against the virus. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation denies inducing lawmakers to pass controversial infectious diseases bill as House begins investigation into allegations of inducement. And the World Health Organization agrees to launch independent inquiry amid COVID-19 criticism as countries pledge millions for fight against virus. Past business and news from Abuja, the FCT, later from our studios in London, and sports news. On business news tonight, oil prices surged to 2-month high on hopes of a rebound in demand and output cuts by enough.
On sports news tonight, English Premier League clubs agree to stage 1 of training protocols which allows teams to train in small groups from tomorrow.
And from Abuja, police go tough on violators of COVID-19 lockdown guidelines in Niger and Kaduna states. More than 2,500 arrested and a cleric sentenced.
The federal government is slowing the phased reopening of the economy by extending the lockdown measures by another 2 weeks. But precision lockdown measures are to be imposed in states recording rapid increases in COVID-19 cases. For Kano State, the task force, which has the second highest number of confirmed cases in the country, the lockdown has been extended by another 2 weeks to enable health workers in the state effectively manage the epidemic. These are some of the measures announced by the chairman of the Presidential Task Force, Saturday's briefing in Abuja.
I welcome you.
Members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 arriving the venue of the Daily News Conference in Abuja.
So we'll begin this afternoon.
It is the first news conference for the second phase of the gradual ease of the lockdown.
The Presidential Task Force,
after highlighting the progress and shortcomings of the first phase of the gradual ease of the lockdown, the PTF chairman announces the decision of President Buhari going forward.
The inevitable conclusion of the PTF is that the fight against COVID-19 is long-term, as the virus is not likely to go away very soon. This is further underscored by the fact that no vaccine is expected till around the end of 2021. The reality is that any relaxation would only portend grave danger for our populace. Advisedly, the current phase of eased restriction will be maintained for another 2 weeks, during which stricter enforcement and persuasion measures will be pursued.
The PTF chairman also speaks on the situation in Kano State, explaining why the lockdown in the state is extended.
Based on the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force, Mr. President has approved the following: maintain the existing lockdown in Kano for another 2 weeks.
The PTF also highlights the importance of improving safety at the workplace, especially among small business owners, just as the national coordinator speaks on the effects of disinformation on the management of the pandemic.
How does the small kiosk owner down the road manage his business in a safe way and realize that in planning for that, he can find a way to be safe, but also to restart his business? And really, this has to be our focus in the next few weeks.
We have noted a growing incidence of fake news, and this is particularly associated with the government's COVID emergency response. We enjoin you to always verify the source and authenticity of news before you share with your friends and loved ones. Let us please help to promote a narrative of truth and facts. We should verify before sharing. There's no doubt spreading falsehood damages our communities, it damages trust, and absolutely undermines the work we are trying to do in controlling this pandemic.
By the 2 weeks extension, the PTF says all the guidelines, including the restrictions imposed during the first phase of the ease of the lockdown, will continue to be in force for the next 2 weeks.
And from the PTF briefing comes some cheery news for Nigerians waiting to be evacuated from across the globe, as the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has agreed to foot some of their expenses. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyama, who conveyed this information, explains that the CBN and the NNPC have offered to pay for the feeding and hotel accommodation of evacuees still stranded abroad.
I briefed you, of course, last week regarding the situation of evacuees. And, of course, one that has got a lot of mileage in social media especially has been the costs that we've had to impose on prospective evacuees to cover their hotel and feeding and other costs. We had to do this because we just do not have the funding. The governor of the central bank very generously, very kindly, and I spoke to the GMD of NNPC, and he said he was going to consult. And so, kept fingers crossed. And thanks be to God, today he got back to me to say he was ready. He was going to meet up with the governor of the central bank, and that together they would fund this portion, a very, very important portion, the accommodation and feeding of evacuees.
Meanwhile, the federal government is investigating the activities of an aircraft belonging to a British company, Flare Jets, which is operating commercial flights into the Mirza Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. While giving an update on the situation at the PTF briefing today, the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, explained that the aircraft had gone beyond its mandate of conducting humanitarian flights. The aircraft was impounded on Sunday and its crew will be quarantined for 14 days.
This company applied a couple of times, severally actually, to us to operate humanitarian flights, and which we did approve. And it is very, very clear at the beginning of this exercise. We define what those kind of flights should be. Essential flights, basically. Cargo, medical evacuation, medical supplies, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, this company turned to become commercial in their service. They were charging money to fly people in and out. In the first place, we believe that the whole essence of a lockdown is to ensure that there is no movement of persons freely. Because this COVID-19 we're all here for, we're all spending sleepless nights for, happened because someone traveled and brought it in. So if you want to catch fish, empty the water. So we believe that by being the lockdown and stopping all these flights, with all of the consequences that is bringing to us, is to prevent people from moving freely. So this shouldn't happen. Current status, we are investigating the matter right now. It will finish very soon. The pilots will be subjected to 14-day quarantine at the moment while investigation goes on. The aircraft is impounded in Lagos.
And in a bid to ensure better harmony in the efforts to check the COVID-19 pandemic, the president has asked state governors to work closely with the presidential task force. President Muhammadu Buhari said this during a virtual meeting today with some representatives of the Nigeria Governors Forum, where he acknowledged that the PTF had briefed him on next steps in the national response to the pandemic. President Buhari said the pandemic was beyond technology, power and resources, noting that countries that had all those were recording highest casualties around the world. Some of those who participated in the session included the governors of Ekiti, Plateau, Sokoto, Ebonyi, Delta, Borno, and Jigawa states. In the council chambers with President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja, where the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the Minister of Finance, Budgets, National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, the SGF, Boss Mustafa, and the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari. Over in the northeast, the Borno state government has adopted a different approach from other states by not repatriating Almaijiri children to their states of origin as part of COVID-19 prevention measures. 24 children sent back from Gombe and Adamawa states have arrived in Borno and are being quarantined but the state government says it has plans for Almaijiri who come from other states to acquire Islamic knowledge.
On the floor of a mosque which doubles as a school, children sit reading in Arabic. They are reciting the Holy Quran, which they must learn to memorize by heart. This is a common sight in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, for many years. They've come from near and far to acquire this knowledge. They are the Almaijiri. Nearly 200 of their counterparts tested positive to the disease in Kano, Kaduna, Gombe, and Bauchi states. Public-spirited organizations have been reaching out to them.
We are helping them in their fasting and at the same time keeping them off the streets so that they can also help in curtailing the spread of the pandemic.
While humanitarian gestures like this goes a long way, only a long-term government policy is capable of solving the problem and keeping the children safe. The Borno state government talks about long-term plans for the children who are being kept on sympathetic grounds.
We do not have any intention of repatriating any Almaijiri back to wherever he or she comes from. The intention of the state government is those Almaijiris that have reached a certain level of the Quranic education, they will be now taken to the higher Muslim school where they'll be taught English, arithmetic, and some basic elementary, syllabuses, alongside the Arabic and Islamic studies, which of course was the main core of them being here.
But in the interim, practicing social distancing or other safety measures will continue to be a mirage in this school and indeed other Quranic schools in town. They still have to sit shoulder to shoulder during classes and squeeze into whatever shelter the Malam provides for them at night.
Still in the northeast, Taraba State has readjusted the two-day window of the restriction of movements to allow residents visit neighborhood markets and purchase food items as well as other essentials. The new days for the ease of the lockdown are Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., while lockdown remains in force on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. The new directive was given by the State Deputy Governor Haruna Manu in a state broadcast. According to him, interstate movement is still restricted and violators will be severely penalized.
At the point that we are presently in our fight to keep the pandemic in check in our state, we believe we can now further slightly ease the present restriction of movement and other activities within the state. Beginning from this week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are now free days during which people can go out and attend to their personal needs. Time allowed is between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. But this must be done with decorum and in strict compliance with the COVID-19 safety rules. Lockdown remains in force on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Interstate movements are still restricted and violators will be severely penalized. Security agencies in the state should be much more vigilant. they should work in synergy with chairmen of local government council areas, particularly those sharing borders with Cameroon and states with high cases of COVID-19 infection.
In part two after the break, are Nigerians ready to comply with COVID-19 lockdown guidelines? We'll tell you the situation from across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us to watch the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 extends gradual easing of lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, Kano and Abuja by 2 weeks, orders security agencies to begin enforcement of guidelines. President Muhammadu Buhari holds virtual meeting with state governors, asks them to work closely with Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to win fight against the virus. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation denies inducing lawmakers to pass controversial infectious diseases bill as House begins investigation into allegation of inducement. And World Health Organization agrees to launch independent inquiry amid COVID-19 criticisms as countries pledge millions for fight against the virus. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV and Roku. Compliance with the gradual easing of the lockdown by the federal government has largely been defied by Nigerians across different geopolitical zones of the country. An assessment of the situation in Borno, Jigawa, Enugu, Akwa Ibom and Lagos states reveals the different levels of compliance to the easing of the lockdown announced by the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, over a week ago. Our correspondent Gimba Umar reports.
From the far north, in Dutse, the Jigawa state capital, the streets says a lot. More people not complying with the safety guidelines of the government. COVID-19 a distant concern. Curiosity, however, gets the better of them on sight in our cameras. Getting on a bike here smacks of irresponsibility, but they don't seem to care. In Borno, northeast of the country, the relaxed lockdown will be extended according to the government.
It is very, very important, especially during this month of Ramadan, for Muslims to pray in their mosques.
Ilorin in the north central has its peculiar characteristics of complying with the guidelines for easing the lockdown. People gathered in clusters in front of the bank and public places. A hawker of face masks clearly in the center, a critical situation where the pandemic could prevail. One element, however, falls short.
Social distancing is a difficult thing to do, and because our way of life and culture.
From Ilorin to Enugu, calm pervades the market. Here, some people wear their face masks, others don't. A group of adults loiters as others, more aware of the pandemic, keep a distance, some alone, even reading the papers for news. Red mini buses adorn the city centre in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. Social distancing here is an illusion. The hustle raises concern of a possible quick spread of the silent killer.
It is very necessary to comply because it's a world pandemic, we have to comply.
In Lagos, the Berger area records the worst of experiences. It's a total disregard of social distancing. The enforcers and the enforced, all in a mix as the police try to arrest defaulters. Nothing seems to have changed from pre-pandemic period.
compliance with the physical distancing is the real issue. If you are able to achieve that in public places, what happens with the buses and the transport and in the market?
The situation suits none, not even the birds, who appear to understand what social distancing means. With people just too many, the capacity to marshal them drops in Lagos. Gimba Umar, Channels Television News.
Let's head on now to Linda Kigbe in Abuja for more on the news at 10. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Amarachi. Welcome to Abuja. With the presidential lockdown in Kano extended by 2 weeks, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje has approved Friday and Eid prayers. The State Commission of Information, Malam Mohammed Garba, confirmed this to Channels Television after an emergency meeting with the State Council of Ulamas. He further explained that strict measures will be put in place to ensure compliance to social distancing and compulsory use of face masks. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has denied offering any inducement to federal lawmakers to pass the Infectious Diseases Bill. The country director of the foundation made the clarification when he appeared before the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee, which is investigating an allegation of bribery. The House Committee investigating the bribery allegation frowned at the absence of the spokesperson of the Coalition of United Political Parties said to have made the allegation. Our correspondent Terry Ikumi reports.
The Ad Hoc Committee of the House of Representatives is continuing its investigation despite an alleged lawsuit which the committee says it is yet to receive.
To set up an internal investigative inquiry.
The committee is investigating an allegation that the House of Representatives had received $10 million to pass the controversial Infectious Diseases Bill.
We will leave no stone unturned in digging out this allegation to confirm whether there are moles amongst the members in the National Assembly.
The allegation, which was said to have been made by the spokesperson of the Coalition of United Political Parties, puts the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the given end.
The foundation has not offered any financial incentives to any member of the Nigerian legislative branch for the passage of the legislation, nor has it offered any grant to organizations in Nigeria in connection with the same.
The committee has also invited the media houses who published the story.
We got this press release via our mail. It was sent to us.
We stopped it in the print, but how it got into the online is subject to internal investigation by Vanguard itself. And we will get to the root of it. It is optional to us to offer you.
The lawmakers are displeased that the CUPP spokesperson is absent and instead sent his lawyer.
The person who alleged this allegation, who started this crisis, refused to come before this committee to testify, to prove his allegations. In my view, I think the committee should not allow appearance of this individual because he was not invited.
CUPP and their representative, their spokesman, Barrister Ikenga, was invited. They failed to appear. We are giving them one more chance to reach this committee.
Lawyer to the CUPP spokesman defends the absence of his client.
Whatever they are doing up till now is null and void because there is a suit, they have been served. You know, the committee is not a juridical person, so we cannot serve the committee. We can only serve the National Assembly. We can serve the Speaker. They have been served. So for the committee to continue sitting, even when they are aware, they are on a frolic of their own.
The committee insists that it will continue its investigation while denying that it has not been served any court papers. The CUPP, however, maintains that the House of Representatives cannot be a judge in its own case. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
The Kogi State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, sitting in Abuja, has dismissed the petition filed by the Social Democratic Party and its candidate in the 2019 governorship election in the state, Ms. Natasha Akpoti. The petitioners had filed a petition challenging the victory of Mr. Yaya Bello of the All Progressives Congress in the November 16, 2019 governorship election. Justice Kashim Kegama, who led the three-man tribunal in its unanimous judgment, held that the testimonies given by the petitioner's witnesses amount to hearsay, are doubtful, illogical, and of no probative value. The tribunal awarded a cost of 600,000 naira to be paid by the petitioners to the three respondents, which are the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the APC, and Governor Bello. Although the lawyer to the petitioners was unavailable for comments, lawyer to the APC applauded the tribunal's verdict. When the News at 10 returns, we have more updates on COVID-19, plus oil prices surged to 2-month high on hopes of a rebound on demand and output costs paying off. That's on Business News. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the News at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. Operatives from Anti-Kidnapping Unit and Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the Plateau State Police Command have successfully rescued the 7-year-old daughter of a senior lecturer of the University of Jos who was killed in the course of the abduction. The Commissioner of Police Plateau State Command, Mr. Edward Ebuka, told journalists that the hoodlums invaded the residence of Dr. Nandi Drenkot at the university's senior staff quarters, where the senior lecturer was killed and his daughter abducted by the hoodlums. In response to the distress call, a combined team of the command operatives and the anti-kidnapping and special anti-robbery squad, including members of the vigilante group and the hunters, were deployed to suspected areas where the hoodlums were hiding.
The senior staff quarters of the University of Jos in Plateau State. The serenity gives an indication that residents here enjoy a peaceful environment. But on Friday, May 15, the tranquility of the neighborhood was jolted in a violent and fatal manner. It was the day hoodlums made their way into the quarters, specifically to Row 6, and forced their way into the home of a senior lecturer at the university, Dr. Nandi Drenkot. The attack did not end well for the lecturer. He was shot and killed by the attackers. What makes the incident more pathetic is that his 7-year-old daughter, Joanna, witnessed the whole thing. And then she was abducted. If there was a time to be proud of the investigative efforts of the Nigeria police, then this will be recorded as one of such. Because 2 days after the incident, the suspects were engaged in a gun battle. One of the kidnappers apprehended and the little girl rescued, along with the man in white, who happened to be another kidnapped victim from a separate location. At the police command, the suspect is paraded with his weapons, injured. His looks do not give him away as a criminal, which goes to show how a book cannot always be judged by its cover. So what does he have to say about this situation?
He's one of the friend of our Oga, which is Abbas. He is the one that called him. To do what? Just to go. He told him that the man have money.
Praising his team for rescuing the victim safely, the Commissioner of Police assures that crimes of this nature will be nipped in the bud.
Of course, they were very cautious because of her, and that might have been the reason why more hoodlums were not arrested. But the one we have is making useful statements, and we are confident that these dangerous, dreadful hoodlums that specialize in breaking into homes and kidnapping particularly vulnerable children, it will soon be a thing of the past.
There is relief all around over the safe return of the little girl. But then how the harsh reality of how our world was turned upside down can be erased from our mind is an enormous task for anyone willing to take on the challenge.
President Muhammadu Buhari today received another august visitor, this time a former Minister of Defense, General Theophilus Danjuma, at the presidential villa in Abuja. The president and the elder statesman, who was once the Chief of Army Staff, met behind closed doors. At the end of the meeting, General Danjuma did not speak to State House correspondents. However, he has been a vocal critic in the past of the bloody clashes between armed herdsmen and farmers and what he described as the federal government's handling of the crisis. And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks a lot, Linda. A Kaduna Mobile Court has convicted a renowned Islamic cleric, Sheikh Yusuf Rigachukun, and his son for violating the quarantine order. The Commissioner for Justice and Attorney General of the state, Aisha Diko, in a statement explained that they were arrested at Kaduna State University Junction for violating the stay-at-home order and not wearing face masks. According to the Commissioner, the cleric and his son were fined 5,000 naira each in order to perform community service by informing the public on how to stop the spread of COVID-19. The statement adds that an army general who was also arrested at the tollgate area of the Kaduna-Abuja Expressway. The army officer, who was in full uniform, was arrested while driving in from Abuja with 3 other passengers who had no face masks. Meanwhile, in neighboring Niger states, the police say they have arrested over 2,500 violators of the lockdown order. The Ishakiri National Youth Council is appealing to President Muhammadu Buhari to prevail on the Niger Delta Development Commission to complete ongoing infrastructure projects cited in their domain. The youth body, which made this appeal during a tour of uncompleted NDDC projects in Ishakiri land, wondered why no action is being taken to complete them despite intervention from the presidency. They also warned that palpable tension is beginning to brew among youths in these communities.
The leadership of the Ishakiri National Youth Council on the move to undertake a tour of uncompleted and in some cases abandoned projects undertaken by the Niger Delta Development Commission in their domain.
This media tour is to draw, first, the attention of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to this level of abandonment of NDDC project in our land.
Shortly after that, the journey begins through open and vast waterways of the largely Creek community. The first port of call is Madaho community in Uborodo.
Dredging activities are taking place here. Engineering-wise, I see that there are a lot of displacement right now to the substructure.
Ogidigbe and Odeborodo are riverine communities which also host major international oil companies. For a community sandwiched by the ocean and its surge, the abandoned shoreline protection project will only expose them further to a complete wipeout if nothing is done, and quickly so.
Some of the houses like these has been washed away.
The sea is pushing us back every day.
The next stop for the touring team is Escravos, Ajidiagbo, where they were received by the traditional Prime Minister of Warri Kingdom, Chief Ayiri Emami, who also lends his voice to the call for completion of abandoned projects in the Ishakiri Kingdom.
You come here at night, you will see the difference between hell and heaven. That's the definition. Where these people are living is hell. Over there is heaven. You go to Shell, semi-heaven. You go to Sheaven, re-heaven. But where the communities, the people that owns where you are drilling from, they're living in hell.
Away from Warri Southwest, the tour continues towards Warri North local government with the first stop at Udo and Bataran communities. Here, some projects being undertaken by the NDDC are visibly begging for completion. The ancestral home of Ishakiri ethnic nationality, Odo Ishakiri, also known as Big Warri, has its share of the oversight. Back in Warri, as the team concludes the tour, the president of the Ishakiri National Youth Council, who led the tour, says the visit to the uncompleted projects in Ishakiri is one out of the several plans in place to make the NDDC and the federal government see reasons for the immediate completion of projects in the interest of Ishakiri people. Ishakiri is one of the biggest oil-producing communities in the Niger Delta region of the country, which explains the need for help they seek.
Bisi Adebayo joins us now with business news.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Welcome to Business News. Crude oil prices jumped to a two-month high today, reflecting output cuts and investors betting that looser lockdowns will boost demand for fuel. US WTI for June delivery surged 7.4% to $31.62 a barrel ahead of the contract's expiration. Global price benchmark Brent crude, which has already rolled to the July contract, also jumped 7.5% to $34.92 a barrel, above Nigeria's 2020 budget oil benchmark of $25 per barrel. The May jump is in sharp contrast to April, when prices plunged below zero and into negative territory for the first time in history, a day before the contract for May delivery expired. Meanwhile, OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Barkindo says the recovery can only be achieved with energy stability because market instability is a major threat to investments. During the Center on Global Energy Policy's Colombia Energy Club virtual roundtable, Barkindo explains that the industry needs the highest levels of cooperation and support from government to stabilize the energy market during the COVID-19 crisis. A report by Moody's Investors Service says that the debt service suspension initiative recently announced by G20 is not likely to ease the significant credit challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in Africa. The ratings agency in a statement adds that the external shock triggered by the pandemic has resulted in foreign currency liquidity shortages for the most vulnerable countries, while aggravating the credit challenges of high and rising debt burdens. However, Moody's explains that debt service relief won't have a significant impact on medium-term debt trends that have worsened during the crisis. Equities resumed the third trading week of May on a positive note, with a 37 billion naira market capitalization rise majorly driven by gains recorded in medium and large stocks. Ekaite Afia gives us figures from today's trading.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. The Nigerian stock market joined its peers around the world to begin the third trading week of May on a positive, as the all-share index climbed 0.29% to 23,941.75 on the back of gains from MTN Nigeria. Now, 2 out of the 5 major sectors we track closed the day in the green, while consumer goods, insurance, and oil and gas declined. A total of 331 million shares worth over 2.9 billion naira changed hands in more than 5,500 deals. Tier 1 lenders were highest on the list of top trades, with Access Bank as the most traded by volume turnover, while Zenith Bank was the most traded in terms of value. Thank you so much for joining us for the Stock Market Report. I'm Ekaite Afia.
Thanks, Ekaite. And it's the same situation globally as stocks rallied today, rebounding from losses last week as news from a Moderna trial stoked optimism about a potential coronavirus vaccine. Let's see some of today's numbers. And that's it on Business News. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Bissy. Still ahead on the news at 10. World Health Organization agrees to launch independent inquiry amid COVID-19 criticisms as countries pledge millions for fight against the virus. We have this and more from our London studio and around the world in 5. Stay with us. Welcome back. The World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus has promised an independent evaluation of the global coronavirus response would be launched as soon as possible. He made the promise during a virtual conference following criticism from the US and other countries on the body's handling of the pandemic, as countries like China pledge assistance to the WHO in fighting the coronavirus. Here's Simon Pusey with more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. China's president has defended the country's response to the coronavirus pandemic and backed an inquiry once the spread of the disease is under control. Speaking at the start of the conference, President Xi Jinping said China had acted with openness and transparency. The virus has killed more than 300,000 people around the world so far. The European Union and Australia are pushing a resolution calling for a review into the origins and spread of the virus. The event is likely to host a strong war of words between China and the United States about how the health emergency has unfolded. Meanwhile, several countries around the globe are continuing to ease their coronavirus lockdown measures. Italy, the country where the contagion in Europe began, started this week to further ease some of the COVID-19 restrictions. People paused to drink coffee seated while hairdressers and restaurants finally opened their doors again. The only visible change is everyone wearing masks and social distancing measures being enforced. Similar scenes in Spain, where restaurants and cafes were allowed to reopen in the region of Valencia, while in Greece, many archaeological sites, including the Acropolis, opened their doors to the public after 2 months of lockdown. And in Portugal, classes resumed in schools. Across the world, in Thailand, shopping malls and restaurants have reopened in Bangkok after a month of being locked down, while in Indonesia, local authorities were forced to close some popular markets for violating social distancing regulations. South Africa's president has been criticised for posing for photos with strangers, despite telling people to keep their distance to reduce the spread of COVID-19. A video uploaded to social media shows Cyril Ramaphosa joking about breaking social distancing rules after 2 women asked him for a photo. He is heard saying, "Come before we get arrested." On Sunday, the country reported 1,160 new coronavirus infections, the highest daily number yet. In Afghanistan, a car bomb has killed at least 7 people near a military base in the Afghan city of Ghazni. According to the provincial governor of Ghazni, 40 other people were wounded in the blast. The attack has been claimed by Taliban insurgents. President Ashraf Ghani has condemned recent violence and says he had ordered the military to switch to offensive mode rather than the defensive stance it had adopted as the United States withdraws troops and tries to broker talks with the Taliban. Scuffles have broken out between pro-democracy and pro-China government legislators in Hong Kong's local legislature for the second time this month. The brawls started when pro-Beijing lawmakers took control of a key committee, paving the way for a debate on a bill that would criminalise abuse of China's national anthem. Guards hauled several legislators out of the chamber, some kicking and shouting. It was the second time in just 10 days that legislators have pushed and shoved each other over the procedures of electing a chairperson. And finally, an Irish drone company has started delivering medication and critical supplies to isolated elderly people whom the Irish government, like many others, have told to stay home to avoid infection. Manor Aero should have been dropping off its first takeaway orders around a Dublin University campus by drone in March, but then the COVID-19 pandemic shut the pilot programme down. After a number of weeks flying to and from residents' homes, the local pharmacy and convenience store Manor says it has proved the technology works. Bobby Healy, Manor's founder, said the aim is to ultimately replace road-based deliveries. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Time now for some sports news. The Nigeria Football Federation has hinted that it will abide by the desires of FIFA in spending the $500,000 relief fund it received from World Football Governing Body last month. According to the NFF communique on the virtual meeting of the Executive Committee, the funds will be spent on, but not limited to, certain core areas in line with the FIFA Forward 2.0 program. Premier League clubs will return to training tomorrow after agreeing to allow small group sessions to begin. The league held a conference call for all 20 club sides where the move was given unanimous backing. And that's sports news.
And the main news again, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today announced the extension of the gradual easing of COVID-19 lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, Kano and Abuja for another 2 weeks. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani.